The carefully chosen bride had now become his sister-in-law. This time, it was Zhao Yan's turn to be stunned.
1.
Today was the grand wedding of Zhao Yan, the Marquis of Yongning. As the bride, I was supported by my maid, about to bow in the traditional ceremony. But just then, the groom suddenly raised his hand and steadied me. "Wait, Jiao, there's something I need to discuss with you first." The guests, who had come to witness the ceremony, looked puzzled. The auspicious time had arrived. What was the young marquis up to? Couldn't this wait until after the wedding? I trembled, my long nails nearly digging into my flesh. Thankfully, the wedding veil concealed my expression, hiding the hatred and resentment in my eyes. Oblivious to my reaction, Zhao Yan continued speaking at his own pace. As everyone knows, I had an elder brother, but he passed away 2 years ago due to illness, leaving behind his widow with no one to rely on. To honor my brother's memory, I have decided to take on the responsibility of both households by marrying my sister-in-law as a second wife. A wave of shock rippled through the audience. The concept of a second wife was absurd. No respectable family would ever allow such a thing. And yet, Zhao Yan had chosen to make this announcement right before the wedding vows, his intent to force my hand blatantly clear. "Don't worry," he added, as if making a grand concession. "If she is a child, it will be recorded under my late brother's name. Only her children will be considered my legitimate heirs and will inherit the marquisate." Zhao Yan thought he was being generous, but I remained silent, like a gourd with its mouth sealed. Yes, this marriage was indeed a step up for me. But it wasn't my family, the Mengs, who had sought out this match. It was the Yongning marquisate, drowning in debt and in decline, that had reached out to us. The old marquis had squandered the family fortune on drinking and gambling, losing everything. His eldest son, Zhao Jun, had been the only one with potential, but his brilliance was short-lived. He died young. With his brother gone, Zhao Yan was forced to take over as head of the household. Hounded by creditors with nowhere to turn, he saw marriage as a solution, baiting a wealthy merchant's daughter with the title of Marchioness. And I, Meng Jiao, was the bride he carefully selected.
2.
Stop pretending to be deaf and mute. Do you agree or not? Give me an answer. In my past life, I had been furious when Zhao Yan made this shameless demand, and I rejected him outright. Yes, I was merely the daughter of a merchant, but I had been raised with love and care, never having suffered such humiliation. When he proposed, Zhao Yan had personally vowed to respect and cherish me for life. It was only because of his promise that my parents agreed to the marriage, even providing a dowry worth a fortune. To put it bluntly, I was here to save him from ruin, not to be humiliated. My refusal had left Zhao Yan speechless, unable to meet my gaze. But the widow, hiding behind the ceremonial hall, felt disgraced. Without a word, she hanged herself. By the time she was discovered, her body was cold and stiff. There was no saving her. Zhao Yan blamed her death entirely on me and resented me bitterly. He had his people poison my food. And just like that, I, Marchioness of Yongning for a mere 3 months, died as my blood slowly dried up. Perhaps even the heavens pitied me, for they allowed me to be reborn, returning to this very moment before the wedding vows. This time, I decided to fulfill Zhao Yan's wish and free myself in the process. The Marquis is so righteous. How could I possibly refuse? I tore off my wedding veil, smiling sweetly at Zhao Yan. His surprise was evident. He hurriedly asked, Jiao, you really agree?" "Of course. Don't waste time, Marquis. Go ahead and invite my dear sister-in-law out." When Qin Wanzhi appeared, she was dressed in a simple, elegant gown, exuding a refined and noble air. She hesitated before speaking softly. "Sister, please don't misunderstand. I never intended to compete with you for a husband. I just want a child to carry on my late husband's legacy. As a woman yourself, I'm sure you can understand my pain." "Of course I do. I don't just understand, I sympathize." I stepped forward and, in full view of everyone, removed my phoenix crown and placed it on Qin Wanzhi's head. She froze, completely bewildered by my actions. You, sister-in-law, and the Marquis are a match made in heaven. I am unworthy of standing in your way. I turned to the stunned crowd and announced, I wish the two of you everlasting happiness. Zhao Yan's face turned ashen. Meng Jiao, have you lost your mind? The marriage between the Zhao and Meng families has already been arranged. If you want to back out, you'll have to leave behind your dowry as compensation. 3. In a moment of desperation, Zhao Yan's true colors were revealed. From the very beginning, he had set his sights on using the Marquis Manor's influence to seize my dowry. And I had no power to resist. Who said I'm going back on my word? The Zhao family has more than just you. Amidst the stunned gazes of the crowd, I walked straight up to the Marquis Manor's illegitimate son, Zhao Yun. This young master has delicate features and a refined air. He suits my taste. I hereby declare that from this moment on, he is my groom. Like a thunderclap, my words sent shockwaves through the hall. For over a decade, Zhao Yun had been the most insignificant presence in the Marquis Manor, practically invisible. Who would have thought that on his legitimate brother's wedding day, he would suddenly become the center of attention? Yet he showed no trace of panic. His gaze, sharp as lightning, swept over my face in an instant. Sister-in-law, don't joke around. Who's joking with you? Without another word, I grabbed his arm and dragged him to the ceremonial hall. The auspicious hour has arrived. Let's proceed with the rites. Ridiculous. Zhao Yan stepped forward and shoved Zhao Yun aside. Meng Jiao, open your eyes and see clearly. This is the Marquis Manor. You think you can do as you please here? I only wish to fulfill the Marquis's wishes. If he refuses, then I can only atone with my death. Before Zhao Yan could react, I had already pulled the silver hairpin from my head and pressed it against my neck. He scoffed coldly, his eyes full of disdain. You think this will scare me? Gritting my teeth, I pressed harder. Drops of blood trickled down, slowly staining the red wedding robe on my chest. Zhao Yan's expression changed instantly. He hadn't expected me to be so ruthless. If I really died here today, all his plans would go up in smoke. At this critical moment, the old madam, seated at the head of the hall, finally spoke. Changing grooms in the middle of the ceremony is absurd, but heaven cherishes life. No matter whom you marry, you will still be a daughter-in-law of the Zhao family. Old madam is wise. Grinning, I signaled the officiant to continue. The officiant hesitated, turning to look at Zhao Yan. At first, Zhao Yan held his ground, refusing to agree. But then Qin Wanzhi leaned in and whispered something in his ear. His expression shifted to one of delight, and he immediately pulled her over to bow before the ancestors. Chapter 4. Like a farcical play, the wedding ended in complete chaos. There was no bridal chamber, so Zhao Yun could only bring me back to his quarters. Who would have thought that a son of the Marquis Manor would live in such a drafty side room, worse off than even the servants? He gave up the only bed for me and took a thin blanket to sleep on the floor. I know, Miss Meng, that marrying me was not your choice. I won't take it seriously. Once the storm passes, we'll get a divorce. Zhao Yun, you speak as if that's for you to decide. His hand paused for a moment before he quickly regained composure. Zhao Jun and his mother saw me as nothing more than a fat piece of meat on the chopping block. They would never let me go until they got what they wanted. What a pity. The once glorious Yongning Marquis Manor is now controlled by a pack of greedy rats. Tell me, Zhao Yun, does it not pain you to see your family in such a state? He lifted his head, his eyes full of wariness. What exactly do you want, Miss Meng? I blinked, then leaned in with a bright smile. I want to join hands with you and rid the manor of its filth. Every last one of them. A flicker of light flashed in Zhao Yun's eyes, but he remained silent for a long time before speaking in a cold voice. Why me? Because the enemy of my enemy is my ally. And you, Zhao Yun, hate the Marquis Manor no less than I do. In my past life, thanks to Zhao Yan, I was only the Marquis's wife for 3 months. But 3 months was enough time to learn a lot. The old marquis had been a reckless man in his youth, leaving behind a manor full of illegitimate children. The old madam was ruthless. Over the years, many had died or been ruined, leaving only Zhao Yan still standing. Not because he was lucky, but because his mother had bargained with her life, drugging Yongning Marquis, so he would never have another child. With his biggest threat eliminated, the old madam was overjoyed. For once, she honored her word and spared Zhao Yan's life. Over the years, he survived on scraps, wore coarse fabrics, had no servants, no tutors, treated worse than a guard dog. In my past life, I pitied him and secretly sent him food and clothes a few times. He was grateful. When he noticed Zhao Yan poisoning me, he even tried to warn me. But I was blind back then, thinking he was stirring trouble. I scolded him harshly instead. Looking back now, I was truly an idiot. Chapter 5. The Yongning Marquis Manor may be in decline, but a centipede doesn't die easily. With just the two of us, we may not be able to change anything. I nodded in agreement, which is why we need a powerful ally, like Prince Cheng, who is currently battling foreign invaders in the southern frontier. Zhao Yun's brows knitted slightly. Though he had never held office, he was well aware of the brutal struggle for the throne among the imperial princes. A single misstep, and we would be doomed forever. Trust me, the position of crown prince will belong to none other than Prince Cheng. Seeing my unwavering confidence, Zhao Yan no longer questioned me. The Zhao family rose through military achievements. I once considered enlisting, but the old madam feared I might truly make a name for myself and never allowed me to leave the manor. I scoffed in disdain. Her own son was useless, so she wouldn't let anyone else succeed either. Truly, the old marquis was blessed to have such a petty, narrow-minded wife. No worries. I have a plan. The next morning, under the pretense of serving tea to my mother-in-law, Zhao Yan made a request. He wanted to live separately. The moment he spoke, the three people before him turned pale. They had gone through so much effort to marry me into the family just to steal my dowry. Now, they hadn't even gotten a single coin. How could they possibly let us go? Zhao Yun, you just got married, and now you want to move out? If word gets out, people will think I'm a cruel stepmother who cannot tolerate others. Exactly. You should have some gratitude. Mother raised you with great difficulty, and now you want to abandon her? Zhao Yan glared at me angrily. You used to be the most obedient. This must be her doing. Just married and already causing trouble. What a homewrecker. You misunderstand, brother. This was my own idea. Now that I am married, I should learn to stand on my own. I can't live under the family's shadow forever. Ridiculous. No matter what excuses you give, as long as I don't agree, you will never leave the Marquis Manor. Zhao Yan's tone was harsh and unyielding. Feigning hesitation, I gently persuaded him. Marquis, please understand. My husband doesn't necessarily have to live separately. He simply wants to prove himself. My father happens to be opening a new shop in the south. Why not let him go and gain some experience? 6. Sister-in-law, you have such a ruthless heart. How could you force your husband to leave on a long journey right after your wedding? Qin Wanzhi was in high spirits today. Though it wasn't the most respectable thing for a woman to marry two brothers, she had secured the position of Marchioness, which she valued most. In her eyes, I was nothing more than a certified fool. As long as we don't split the family, anything can be discussed. The old madam's anger instantly turned into joy. With Zhao Jun leaving the residence, she could control me without restraint. To her, this was the best possible outcome. The war in the southern border had dragged on for years, leaving the national treasury empty and the kingdom struggling to sustain itself. I pleaded with my father to gather 8 million taels worth of grain and entrusted Zhao Jun to deliver it to the southern border as a gift to Prince Cheng upon their first meeting. Zhao Jun was grateful, but even more concerned. My journey south will take at least half a year. I can't bear to leave you alone in the Marquis residence. Go ahead and do what you must. I have my own ways to protect myself. Before we divorce, you'd better earn me an honorary title. On the second day after Zhao Jun's departure, The old madam summoned both Qin Wanzhi and me to assign household duties. You are both the primary wives, so you must learn to manage the household. There are two key aspects: personnel and finances. Each of you should take charge of one according to your strengths. Before the old madam even finished speaking, Qin Wanzhi immediately spoke up. I have been in the residence longer and am familiar with the staff. As for my sister-in-law, she comes from a merchant family and has been handling abacuses since childhood. Managing the accounts is most suitable for her. That makes sense. The old madam didn't give me any chance to refuse and had the account books shoved into my hands.
How amusing.
The Yongning Marquis was drowning in debt with no wealth to manage. These two simply wanted me to fill their financial hole. I was very obedient. On my first day in charge, I ordered several large carts of treasures: gold, silver, jewelry, silks, and rare delicacies. The old madam was so delighted she could barely contain herself. Over the years, she had racked her brain just to maintain the family's basic dignity. Now, she could finally live like a true noblewoman. With a wave of her hand, she decided to hold a grand flower-viewing banquet and invited all the noble ladies of the capital. The wedding was a mess and made us a laughingstock. This time, you must put in some effort and show the world the true power of our Marquis.
7.
With such an order, I naturally had to go all out. On the day of the banquet, I hired the renowned chefs of Drunken Immortal Tower at a high price. Every dish on the table was made with the finest, most luxurious ingredients, enough to make one's mouth water just by looking. Beyond that, I went through great efforts to invite Jiang Yuhan, the most famous opera performer of our time. Master Jiang had been in seclusion for years, unwilling to perform despite the hefty sums offered by countless nobles. Yet today, he appeared at a gathering of women, causing an immediate stir. The old madam basked in the attention, lost in the admiration and flattery of the crowd. However, what she didn't expect was that as soon as Jiang finished his performance, he walked straight up to her, spread his hands, and demanded payment. My lord had a long-standing friendship with the late Marquis. In his honor, I'll accept half the usual fee, just 500 taels. 500 taels? The old madam's face froze, and she instinctively looked at me. What's this, madam? Do you find it too much? And not at all. Jiao, why are you just standing there? Hurry and take Master Jiang to the accounts room to collect his payment. I widened my eyes, feigning innocence. Mother, what are you saying? The accounts have been empty for a long time. Surely you haven't forgotten. The old madam never expected me to expose her in public. Her face turned as red as a boiled shrimp. But it wasn't over yet. The head chef, the butcher, and the florists all flooded in, demanding their payments. The scene was livelier than the busiest market street. Meng Jiao, what are you doing? Isn't the household spending covered by you? Hurry and pay them off. As soon as Qin Wanzhi finished speaking, laughter erupted from the guests, the loudest being from Princess Zheng. A dignified marquis, relying on extorting a concubine-born daughter-in-law's dowry to survive? You won't find another joke like this in the entire capital. In a fit of humiliation and rage, the old madam slapped Qin Wanzhi so hard that she fell to the ground. What nonsense are you spewing? When have I ever used her money? Qin Wanzhi was the old madam's biological niece, which was why she had been allowed to marry both brothers in succession. She had never imagined that the grandmother who doted on her the most would strike her in public. Before she could dwell on her grief, a sharp pain shot through her abdomen, making her scream in panic. Sister-in-law, what's wrong? I appeared anxious and ordered the servants to call for a doctor before the old madam could react. Yet when the doctor arrived, Qin Wanzhi refused to have her pulse checked no matter what. Sister-in-law, could you be faking this just to make mother feel guilty?
8.
Utter nonsense. Qin Wanzhi reached out to scratch my face, but I firmly pinned her down. Taking the chance, the doctor grabbed her wrist. Within moments, his face lit up with joy. Congratulations, madam. You are 3 months pregnant. You must be cautious and avoid harming the baby. Princess Zheng, ever direct, immediately questioned. If I recall correctly, the Marchioness and young Marquis have only been married for 2 months. How could she be 3 months pregnant? Doctor, are you sure you haven't made a mistake? The doctor hastily knelt and swore that his diagnosis was correct. The old madam's face turned from black to pale as she trembled uncontrollably. 3 months ago, Qin Wanzhi was still a widow. Having relations with a man at that time, no matter who he was, meant she had committed adultery. Qin Wanzhi knew the gravity of the situation and fell to her knees, pleading, "Mother, please listen to me. This child is Zhao Yan's." That night, we were both drunk and lost control. But we are married now, so this child is the legitimate heir of the Marquis, your own grandson. What are you all standing around for? Drag this disgraceful wretch out of my sight. As Qin Wanzhi's cries faded into the distance, the old madam clenched her teeth and bowed to the guests. My apologies. I have failed to discipline my household properly. Please, I beg of you, do not spread this scandal. The guests were all seasoned nobles. They patted their chests, promising secrecy. Yet, the moment they stepped out of the Marquis, gossip flew like wildfire. Just as I finished seeing off the last of the guests, I heard someone calling my name. Looking up, I saw Princess Qing sitting in her carriage, motioning for me. So, you're the famous Meng family girl, the one who refused to be humiliated and swapped grooms on the wedding day? I smiled sheepishly and nodded. The princess immediately gave me a thumbs up. You are truly a role model for women. I came here today just to meet you. Thank you for your kind words, Your Highness. I don't dare accept such praise. There's no need for modesty. His Highness has written to tell me that the 8 million taels of grain you donated have saved the frontline soldiers in their most desperate hour. With this, victory is assured. My eyes lit up. This was truly good news. His Highness also instructed me to take special care of you. If you ever need anything, just say the word. I will do everything in my power to help.
9.
Wonderful. I actually have a favor to ask of Your Highness. I leaned in and whispered into the princess consort's ear. She nodded repeatedly as she listened. Under the old madam's interrogation, Zhao Yan finally admitted that he and Qin Wanzhi had already engaged in an illicit affair while my elder brother was gravely ill. And my poor brother, he had caught them in the act, the shock causing his blood to surge, leading to a stroke that claimed his life. The old madam, who had always taken the most pride in her eldest son, was devastated to learn that he had died in such an unjust manner. She wanted to severely punish the guilty pair, but couldn't bring herself to be truly ruthless. In the end, she only brought misfortune upon herself, falling gravely ill from the grief. Qin Wanzhi blamed it all on me and incited Zhao Yan to come after me. But before he could take action, an imperial decree stripped him of his title and position, catching him completely off guard. The Yongning Marquis Manor had long been in decline. Zhao Yan only held a hollow 6th-rank position at court and rarely even got an audience with the emperor. He simply couldn't understand. Why would the exalted son of heaven suddenly take an interest in his personal conduct and deal such a severe punishment? It made no sense. Seeing him look as if he were mourning his own parents, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. The emperor naturally wouldn't remember who he was, but the censors had been bombarding the throne with impeachment memorials, flooding the imperial desk like snowflakes. And behind all of them was none other than the princess consort's handiwork. In a single night, Zhao Yan had fallen from marquis to commoner, a descent as steep as tumbling from heaven to hell. The creditors, who had once feared the Marquis Manor's power and dared not act rashly, now swarmed the residence, demanding repayment. Harassed beyond endurance, Zhao Yan had no choice but to live in hiding, drowning his days in alcohol. But that didn't last long. One day, he suddenly disappeared. It wasn't until the old madam received a ransom note that she realized her son had been kidnapped. His desperate creditors had issued an ultimatum: repay all debts within 3 days, or Zhao Yan would be dismembered. Panic-stricken, the old madam came to beg me for help. Jiao, my good daughter-in-law, you're the only one our family can rely on now. Have mercy and save Yenner. I swear, from now on, you will have the final say in this household. I furrowed my brows, looking extremely troubled. The old madam grabbed Qin Wanzhi and dropped to her knees with a heavy thud. Jiao Jiao, if you refuse, we'll kneel here until we die. Mother, I sighed helplessly, then nodded. Rest assured, tomorrow I will send over my dowry. It should be enough to bring brother back. With my promise, the two finally relaxed, mumbling their thanks before returning to nurse their illnesses. And I kept my word. The next morning, I ordered my people to empty out the entire storeroom.
10.
The kidnappers, true to their word, released Zhao Yan that very night. Though only 2 days had passed, he looked as if he had aged more than a decade. It was clear he had suffered terribly. My son, you're finally back. I thought I'd never see you again in this lifetime. The old madam hugged him, weeping bitterly. Zhao Yan, too, couldn't hold back his tears. Husband, Qin Wanzhi clutched her belly, not daring to step forward. Since being stripped of his title and rank, Zhao Yan had shown her nothing but a cold face. More than once, in his drunken stupor, he had even confessed his regret for his moment of weakness, for betraying his brother, and for ruining himself in the process. Son, you must thank Jiao Jiao properly. If not for her, you wouldn't have made it back alive. Zhao Yan stepped toward me, ready to bow, but I sidestepped him. Brother, you're thanking the wrong person. It was mother and sister-in-law who saved you. It had nothing to do with me. What nonsense is that? Didn't you use your own dowry to pay the ransom? I did use a dowry, but not mine. It was yours and sister-in-law's. Who would have thought the Qin family, known for their uprightness, had such a wealthy foundation? There were quite a few treasures in there that I'd never even seen before. The old madam's vision went black, and she nearly collapsed. What did you say? You used my dowry. Ignoring her own pregnancy, Qin Wanzhi stumbled toward the storeroom in a panic. Soon, the entire household was filled with piercing screams and wails, as if someone had died. You venomous woman! How dare you? That was my life savings, and now it's all gone. You might as well have killed me. Mother, how can you say that? Are material possessions really more important than your own son's life? The old madam clutched her chest, unable to breathe. This time, she truly fainted. I ordered the servants to carry her away, then turned to see Qin Wanzhi glaring at me with pure hatred. You wretch! Why didn't you use your own dowry? That was my only security. What right did you have to make that decision? Sister-in-law, your words are rather strange. Brother is your husband. It's only right for you to save him. Why should I, his sister-in-law, take responsibility? Unless you look down on him now that he's lost his title and never wanted him to return in the first place. That's nonsense. Just you wait. I won't let this slide. Seeing Zhao Yan's expression darken, Qin Wanzhi could only glare at me before storming off in a fury. I knew she was brewing something, but I hadn't expected her to be despicable enough to collude with her family and go after my parents. Do you know the punishment for smuggling private salt? Your parents are already elderly. How long do you think they can survive in prison? The Meng family has always been law-abiding. Heaven bears witness. You abuse your power, setting traps. Aren't you afraid of divine retribution? Qin Wanzhi sneered, her eyes gleaming with madness. Retribution? My retribution is you. Enough talk. Drink this, and I'll spare your parents' lives. In broad daylight, you dare commit murder?
What?
Are you afraid to die? I locked eyes with her, then abruptly lifted the cup and drained it in one go. At the dead of night, Zhao Yan staggered back home, reeking of alcohol. As he passed the woodshed, he suddenly heard some indecent noises coming from inside. A jolt ran through him, instantly sobering him up. Those damn servants. How dare they engage in debauchery so openly? Did they take him for a fool? Fuming, he groped around the corner and grabbed a wooden stick. With one fierce kick, he burst through the door. By the dim candlelight, he saw a man and a woman, their clothes in disarray, entangled on a pile of hay. And the woman moaning breathlessly was none other than his pregnant wife, Qin Wanzhi. You whore. I'll kill you. Zhao Yan's eyes turned bloodshot. Without thinking, he swung the stick down with all his might. Qin Wanzhi jolted awake. Seeing the scene before her, her face twisted in horror. This isn't right. It shouldn't be like this. Husband, listen to me. Let me explain. Please, listen to me. But a man drowning in fury could not hear reason. His strikes grew even more ruthless, and soon, the hay was soaked in blood. Hearing the commotion, Madame Dowager and I rushed over, only to be struck speechless by the sight. Qin Wanzhi clutched her belly with one hand and pointed at me with the other, her voice full of venom. You wretched woman. You set me up. You'll die a miserable death. I sneered inwardly. Qin Wanzhi had schemed to ruin my reputation, even going so far as to hire an ignorant courtesan from the South Wind Pavilion. But she never knew every single servant in this household was under my control. The drug she had meticulously prepared never reached me. Instead, she swallowed it herself. This was karma. She had no one to blame but herself. With the princess consort's help, I successfully rescued my parents. As for Qin Wanzhi, it was no surprise. She lost the child. Zhao Yan showed no grief. With a mother like her, who could guarantee that the child was even his. He initially wanted to drown her according to the clan rules, but the Madame Dowager intervened desperately. The Marquis household was already ruined. If they offended her family too, they would have no future at all. Although she was spared death, Qin Wanzhi was better off dead. Zhao Yan locked her in the woodshed, forbidding anyone from approaching. She was fed nothing but scraps meant for dogs. Every time he faced mockery outside, he took it out on her. New wounds overlapped old scars. There was not a single patch of intact skin left on her. A cruel fate. While they tore each other apart, I had no time to relish it. For over half a month, I had received no letters from Zhao Jun. Since his departure south, he had never failed to send a letter every 10 days. From his words, I could tell he adapted quickly, thriving on the battlefield, steadily growing into Prince Cheng's right-hand man. I was happy for him, but I couldn't help but worry. After all, swords and arrows spared no one. The battlefield was merciless. Who could guarantee his safety? And sure enough, the thing I feared most happened. That day, Zhao Yan returned, grinning from ear to ear, bringing news of Zhao Jun's death. My vision went black. Forcing myself to stay calm, I immediately rushed to Prince Cheng's residence to seek confirmation from the princess consort. Holding a freshly delivered message from a carrier pigeon, her face was grim. His Highness says young master Zhao fell off a cliff while pursuing the enemy. Whether he lives or dies remains unknown. I trembled, as if plunged into an icy abyss. If even the princess consort put it that way, the chances of survival were slim. Though Zhao Jun and I had not spent much time together in this lifetime, he was the one I trusted most. Now that he was gone, could I still continue down this path of vengeance? After Zhao Jun's accident, Zhao Yan used the excuse of keeping an eye on me to visit my room 3 times a day. Bringing tea, delivering meals, his enthusiasm was unsettling. I knew his intentions were far from pure, but I stayed put. Zhao Jun's body had yet to be returned. As his nominal wife, I had the duty to see him properly buried. A mother knows her son best. The Madame Dowager saw through Zhao Yan's schemes and began plotting as well. She summoned me, her expression solemn as she bowed deeply. "Mother, what are you doing?" She waved me off and pulled me to sit beside her. Jiao, I was wrong. I should never have indulged Yan's foolishness. If he had married you back then, the Marquis household wouldn't have fallen to this state. Zhao Jun was never meant to live long. He was never worthy of you. Only Zhao Yan is your true destiny. I widened my eyes, yanking my hand away. Mother, what nonsense are you saying? My sister-in-law is still alive. How could I possibly be with my brother-in-law? The Madame Dowager feigned sorrow and sighed. She is on her deathbed. She won't last much longer. I know you are a proper girl who follows the rules. I won't let you suffer any grievances. The moment she dies, I will arrange a grand wedding for you and Yan." She spoke with such righteousness, as if granting me the greatest honor. The final straw. I swallowed my disgust and let out a cold laugh. As expected from the battle-hardened Madame Dowager. For the sake of power, you would even discard your own niece. I truly wonder, after all the lives you've ruined, do you ever fear them haunting you in your dreams? Her face turned deathly pale, and her trembling finger pointed at me. You insolent girl. I am doing you a favor, yet you refuse to appreciate it. Oh, I thank you for your kindness, Madame Dowager. But, as a mere merchant's daughter, I am not worthy of your noble son. You should give up on this idea." With that, I turned and left, leaving the old woman fuming behind me. I thought severing all pretenses would make them abandon their absurd notions. But I underestimated just how ruthless this mother and son could be. That day, Zhao Yan claimed he had received news about Zhao Jun and told me to meet him in the study. I made arrangements, telling my trusted servants that if I did not emerge within 15 minutes, they were to break in immediately. Once inside, Zhao Yan greeted me with a smirk and poured me tea. I couldn't be bothered with his games and knocked the cup to the ground. "Get to the point. Say what you need to say and cut the nonsense." Zhao Yan's smile faded. His gaze darkened. Jiao, can you give me another chance? I swear, I will treat you well for the rest of my life. You are the only woman I will ever have." I stared at him indifferently and nodded. "That I believe. You have no status, no power, no future. What woman would be blind enough to want you?" Zhao Yan's expression twisted with rage, his face flushing red. "Meng Jiao, don't look down on me. Mark my words. One day, the emperor will restore my family's title. Sure, keep dreaming." I saw through his lies and turned to leave. But just as I stood up, my legs suddenly gave out. I collapsed to the floor. 14. Zhao Yan's face was filled with excitement as he burst into uncontrollable laughter. "Haha, Meng Jiao, did you really think bribing the servants in this household would render me powerless? Let me tell you, this is the Zhao family. As long as you remain here, you will never escape my grasp." I struggled to get up, but my body was completely drained of strength. An unbearable heat surged through me, as if countless ants were gnawing at my skin. "Don't waste your energy. Do you see that ylang-ylang flower on the table? Every petal has been soaked in aphrodisiac. Just a faint whiff is enough to set one's body ablaze with uncontrollable desire. You despicable, shameless bastard." I regretted it so much. Why hadn't I crippled him sooner? Now, I had fallen into such a dire situation. Go ahead and curse me. I enjoy listening to it. Zhao Yan grabbed me and threw me roughly onto the bed. "The people you arranged have all been knocked unconscious. Even if you scream until your voice breaks, no one will come to save you." With a twisted grin, he leaned in close, rubbing his face against mine like a lust-driven boar. Gritting my teeth, I summoned the last of my strength, raised the silver hairpin in my hand, and stabbed it toward his neck. "You wretched thing. Trying to sneak an attack? As if I wouldn't be prepared for that." Zhao Yan easily snatched the hairpin away and tossed it to the floor. "You'd better kill me now. Otherwise, I swear, even in death, I will never forgive you. Women are all the same. The hardest thing about them is their mouth. But after tonight, I'm afraid you'll be begging me to show you more tenderness." His movements became increasingly rough, and soon, he had torn my clothes to shreds. Just as despair consumed me, the weight on my body suddenly lifted. Zhao Yan was yanked into the air, his arms flailing in panic. The moment I saw Zhao Jun, the tears I had been holding back flooded down my cheeks. "You're alive. Thank goodness, you're really alive. Those who dare violate my wife deserve to die." Zhao Jun swung his arm, slamming Zhao Yan hard against the ground. Zhao Yan lost consciousness instantly. "Don't be afraid. From this moment on, no one can ever hurt you again." Zhao Jun removed his cloak and wrapped it tightly around me. Clutching his shoulder, I felt his strong, steady heartbeat. My own heart soared, as if lifted to the heavens. Chapter 15. His strides were long and swift. In the blink of an eye, he had carried me back to his room. Rest well. I'm going to deal with that bastard right now. Don't go. I feel awful, please help me, save me. The aphrodisiac was even stronger than I had expected. Earlier, the tension had kept me from noticing it. But now that the danger had passed, the unbearable heat surged uncontrollably, consuming me from the inside out. Zhao Jun's eyes darkened, his voice turning hoarse. Think carefully. Once we cross this line, there's no turning back. Turn back. I don't want to turn back. I only want you. My voice trembled with shame, tinged with the hint of a sob. Desire flooded Zhao Jun's gaze like a dam breaking, overwhelming and unstoppable.
I'm sorry.
In my past life, I hesitated too much. This time, I will never let myself live with regrets again. Something stirred in my heart. I felt as if I had grasped a truth, yet before I could process it, the rising tide of heat swept away all rational thought. By the time I woke up again, it was already noon the next day. Zhao Jun sat at the edge of the bed, bare-chested, quietly watching me. Ignoring my embarrassment, I immediately asked, "You're back too?" Zhao Jun nodded without hesitation. While pursuing the enemy commander, I fell off a cliff with him. When I regained consciousness, fragments of my past life's memories surfaced in my mind. I didn't dare waste a second. I rode day and night, rushing back to the capital. Fortunately, I made it in time. Thank you. Whether in our past life or this one, you've helped me so much. I owe you more than I can ever repay. There's no need for gratitude between us. His piercing gaze left me with nowhere to escape. Thinking about last night's madness, I wanted nothing more than to bury myself in a hole. I was drugged. I had no idea what I was doing. If I was out of line, you should just forget about it. As expected, you're trying to deny it. Luckily, I came prepared. Zhao Jun smirked mischievously, pulling out a bamboo slip with fresh ink and a bright red handprint. I swear to never abandon my husband, Zhao Jun. If I break this vow, may Zhao Jun's intestines rot and his body perish miserably. I couldn't help but laugh through my tears. Who swears on their own life like this? How utterly unlucky. You're not saying anything. That means you've agreed. Zhao Jun pulled me into his arms, refusing to let go. I smiled knowingly, feeling an unprecedented sense of security and fulfillment. At this moment, I was certain he was the one sent by fate to save me. Chapter 16. At my request, Zhao Jun finally agreed to spare Zhao Yan's life. Not out of mercy. I simply felt that death was too easy for him. I ordered his tendons severed and locked him up in the firewood room with Qin Wanzhi. After being imprisoned for so long, Qin Wanzhi's mind had deteriorated significantly. She drifted between moments of lucidity and madness. Zhao Yan's fate could only be imagined. Desperate to save her son, the old madam snuck out in the dead of night and went to the authorities to accuse Zhao Jun of harming his elder brother. But as soon as the magistrate heard the name Zhao Jun, his face turned pale with fear. Are you referring to the imperial protector, General Zhao Jun? The one who personally slew the enemy commander and secured a great victory for our nation? You, a mere commoner, how many lives do you have to dare slander a national hero? Covered in wounds, the old madam staggered through the deserted streets. In her daze, she fell into a foul-smelling drainage ditch. Her corpse, wrapped in filth, went unnoticed for days, until it was finally devoured by a pack of starving dogs. Even in death, she never understood how the illegitimate son she had suppressed for years had suddenly risen to become a figure who shook the entire court. But that was only the beginning. After ascending as crown prince, Prince Cheng, grateful for Zhao Jun's unwavering loyalty and valor, petitioned the emperor to grant him the noble title of a duke. And as his wife, I was bestowed the honor of becoming the youngest duchess in the history of the dynasty. It was perfect. In this life, I gained both wealth and status. More importantly, I gained a lifelong companion. From now on, we would live in happiness, relentlessly, fiercely, and without end. The end.